Hello, this is Mark with The Mike Stone Show, music, stories, and conversations. Today, Mike will be bringing you the second episode of his Conversation with Ed Koss. Mike's guest today has lived a life that sounds like it came straight from the pages of a spy novel. Ed Koss is a global traveler who has visited 177 countries, a military intelligence specialist, aviation expert, and author of more than 87 professional publications. He has also written 11 works of fiction inspired by his real-life adventures in military intelligence and international contract work. Stories that echo the intrigue and excitement of the legendary spy James Bond. Today, we'll hear about his remarkable career, his travels around the world, and the stories behind the stories. Just a quick heads up before we start. Today's episode includes discussion of real intelligence operations and covert work. Some of the stories involve dangerous situations and mature themes, so listener discretion is advised. Let's go to Mike now for his Conversation with Ed Koss.
I drove my car up to Boston, and then I was checking in. I had a guy that helped me check in through all the bureaucracy, and it was about 3 or 4 days later, and he says, "Has anybody told you what you're going to be doing?" I said, "No, nobody said anything." He said, "Well, you're going to be in intelligence." And I said, "Well, that sounds really cool." Well, within 4 or 5 weeks, I couldn't have drawn this up any better than if they'd tell me exactly what you want us to do. They did a better job than I could have done. And I said, "I don't know how this happens." I was in shock. I said, "We all know about the war stories where you want to be a fighter pilot and end up in the kitchen peeling potatoes. We know about those stories, but nobody comes up with this kind of story." And I was almost shocked and a little bit afraid. I said, "How can all of this be happening just perfectly, just perfect?" And it was.
Destiny fell right into your lap.
It did. Right from the very first get-go. I mean, I did nothing. I just showed up and
And a lot of people didn't like that you showed up because they didn't want you flying their plane. They didn't want you spending their money. And they said, where are you from? So
yeah, you got it exactly right, Michael. That if you're worried about being the popular guy on base, you don't want my life, because a lot of guys wouldn't talk to me, didn't know anything about it. And if they did know it, they were angry with you. "Well, who do you think you are?" I said, "Listen, I'm just doing my job. If you got a problem, go talk to the general." I didn't associate with many of them because I was like, you'll see it in the book a lot. I'll always say, always alone, but never lonely.
I've said that many times already. We'll get into the novels right before we get out of here. I know you spent a lot of time, and I know you married a lady there in that Golden Triangle, the Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. We know that as a Golden Triangle. I know there was a lot of, back in my day, in my career, a lot of heroin, a lot of things came out of the Golden. I know you had a lot of experience in that area about the Golden Triangle. Can you tell our listeners, what about that area? What's going on there? And now I think, Ed, they've got a thing called scam compounds there, bringing people from all over the world, and they mistreat them and abuse them and make them work in there for years on scams, different kind of romance scams or finance scams. Can you shed some light on the Golden Triangle for us?
I first went to the Golden Triangle probably 1995, and I pretty much went there every year for the next 25 years. And so there's a lot of primitive, if you will, adventures in that area. Lots of huge amounts of drugs, a lot of lawless. You got these militias up there and everything. So, and then the scam centers came about because they had this big online gambling move in Southeast Asia. So all the Chinese wanted to go online gambling. Well, they shut all of those down. They shut down online gambling. Well, there's the infrastructure of all these computers and everything, but now there's no use because we can't gamble. So they transitioned that into these scam centers where which, like you say, it's kind of brutal. They basically kidnap people and then torture them. And here's the kicker. Maybe it's just my life, but a couple of those scam centers they closed down were about 3 blocks away from where I live in Cambodia. You would never know it, but they were all over the place in the city. That was all known by the people in power. They were making huge amounts of money. The main guy was in Cambodia, supposedly not a Chinese citizen, but he was, because they took him away as if he was a Chinese citizen. You go back 50 years, the Golden Triangle was always the point. And a lot of that ties in with the Vietnam War. So you had these people in Burma, in Laos with the poppies, and they needed it. And the marketplace was the American GI that funneled all of that business. That was the business base that started all of the drugs was the Vietnam War. And once that went away, then they found other marketplaces. If you look at that movie Air America, you'll see that Air America was flying all through that stuff. Lots of heroin and cocaine. Kind of disrupted a lot of that, but I'm sure it's still going on a lot.
So now you have a lot of Chinese. Most of these compounds, scam compounds, are run by Chinese or influenced by Chinese mafia, or what you would call it.
Yeah, that's right. The Chinese are front and center on all of this stuff, whether it's Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. It's all Chinese gangsters.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you along with that, because I know a lot of these scammers deal in cryptocurrency. I know you have a lot of education in finance, a lot of knowledge. What about cryptocurrency? My son tells me it's used mostly for illegal operations.
Yeah, it's own a crypto coin. You basically own some computer code somewhere. So the only way they mine this stuff is an algorithm that says that you can only produce so much of this. So it's kind of like gold. It's very rare. So the crypto means you just can't inflate it. There's a natural end to the crypto. They haven't got there yet, but it takes the beginning of the algorithm. You can do it. You can get these codes maybe in 6 months or a year. But then as it goes on, it takes more and more time, more and more compute power to get the next coin, because you have to go through this whole elaborate algorithm and produce one Bitcoin. Well, produce the next Bitcoin, you got to not only start back at the beginning, but you've got more algorithms to go through to get the next Bitcoin. And then there's a finite number of Bitcoins that you can actually produce based on the algorithm. So that's part of the crypto. And I don't know if you've read a part, but they have ways to assign value to a crypto coin. So this guy in Cambodia, who was front and center, if you want to look it up, just Google Prince Group. And this guy's name was Chinzi. And this all happened the last 6 months. So this is hot off the press. The Prince Group was basically ground zero for collecting all these Bitcoins that these scam centers would get the money, and then they would convert them into Bitcoin. So there's people that do that. This guy had accumulated $15 billion worth of Bitcoin. And the U.S. found out about it probably 2 or 3 years ago, but they were very quiet about it until the day in October of last year when they said, okay, it's time to move. These guys may be onto us and they'll disable all of this crypto stuff. So the U.S. decided to move. And then probably once they got everything set up, they probably emptied the $15 billion worth of crypto coin in less than 1 second. It all disappeared. And the Chinese guys probably watched it go on their screen. I mean, it's one of those events where we got 15 billion. Whoops, wait a minute, what happened? What's happening? And they could just see it all disappear. The U.S. ended up with $15 billion worth of crypto. I think the British ended up with $2 billion of crypto. And then there's a whole bunch of real estate investments and stuff that the U.S. and the British have confiscated. But this guy, he was front and center. They built a whole compound and a whole group of nest of high-rise buildings about a mile away from where I live. My townhouse is on a dead-end street in the diplomatic zone in Phnom Penh. So it's a very interesting area to live in because of all this stuff.
The crypto was stolen or taken by Americans who were...
Yeah, they got all the codes, so They got the crypto.
Yeah, would this be contract workers who were able to do this, or would this be military intelligence or the U.S. government?
It's probably a combination. I'm sure the military, the FBI and CIA, they have their own cyber guys. So, and they'll also contract out certain technical jobs. And so that group of people were the ones that stole it all, if you will. They didn't steal it. It was nobody's to begin with. To get those codes, there was one guy, it was done in Bangkok, Thailand, the guy that basically blew the whistle on him. He knew all the codes. He was very, very close to this guy, Chin Zi. And I think his conscience got to him, because they were just brutalizing these people. They don't even know how many, but probably 100,000, 150,000, basically slaves in these buildings, looking at these computer screens, never able to get out or anything. I'll bring a picture of one of them that's about 2 blocks from my house. So, I mean, it's right. It's not like you're going to the ghetto or something. These scam centers are right in the middle of affluent areas.
Evidently, there's people getting scammed every second of the day to be able to do that.
Yeah, they've taken that model, which was perfected in Southeast Asia, and now they've taken it to Central America and South America and places like that. It's all electronic. So, tell you the truth, it's really hurt old school drug trade, because nobody wants to raise poppies anymore. Don't want to raise coca plants, because you got to raise the plants, you got to process them and get the chemicals and all of that stuff. Then you got to transport them and sneak them in. This way, electronically, you just scoop it up. And this guy had $15 billion worth of it. Well, that's more than a cartel. That's 10 years worth of cartel money right there. They got it probably in less than 5. I'm sure there's somebody writing the book about this guy Chinzi, and Cambodia is ground zero for the whole thing. And I'm sure it'll come out in the next year or two. Somebody's writing the story, and most of it will happen within a mile of my home. Actually, I didn't know what was going on, but it was. There was a war. There's been a border war in Cambodia and Thailand, and the Thai guys bombed one of the border casinos in Cambodia. Well, out comes all these workers. Well, what I was shocked at, this only happened maybe in January, all the workers were not from Thailand or Cambodia or Philippines, they were all from India and Pakistan. I said, where in the world did they get? We're starting to scam those people now. There were probably 300 of them. They were all Pakistani or Indians. And I said, well, my God, I thought we're doing Southeast Asia. Now we're all the way over there.
Luring people and on the promise of a good job, I think is what they do. Yeah, and they get there. You're gonna be an IT person over so many people, and come, we'll pay you away. And then when they get there, slam, and they bring you in. You can't get out.
And they do it immediately. So many stories that a guy will talk about. The scammers would meet the target at the airport. He's a young guy, he's 25, very smart in IT and everything. He thinks he's going to get this nice job and everything. They said they lead him to the car. He gets in the back. They immediately lock the doors, take his passport, and then that's it, man. They treat him like garbage right after that. They take him straight to the compound, throw him in there, get on the internet, and you start scamming people. The only drama is the beginning. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But as soon as they pick you up at the airport, they slam the door on you right there. It goes from really happy times to you're just a prisoner and a slave.
I guess, Ed, what our listeners need to know is these scams are very elaborate. They really take you down a rabbit hole, and sometimes it takes months before they finally grab you. But their goal is eventually they're going to ask you for, well, can you help me? I need this money for this or that or whatever. And that's eventually what's going to happen. So I would say to our listeners, you got to be so careful when you start falling into any of this kind of stuff. You need to be aware, put a big aware sign on you, because these folks are smart. They're elaborate schemes. And as you said, they got smart people doing them. And these people are at the risk of their own life if they don't do it right.
That's right. And you're right. They have very elaborate scripts. And the idea is that they will, some of these cases, if you will, these targets, they will be working these people for 4 or 5 weeks, just trying to manipulate them and make them feel good about this, that, and the other. And then when they get an opportunity, a lot of it may be, well, there's a great investment opportunity or something. There'll be a point in time where they can get an opening where they can raid somebody's bank account. And then that's what they call pig butchering. Basically, when they get to that point where they basically capture you, string you up and bleed you to death. And it'll happen very quickly. The scammers will acting like friends, and then all of a sudden they just disappear.
Oh, yeah. They're gone. So, you send the money. Now they're gone, disappear. You can't. Yeah, where's my sweetheart? Where's my lovely lady there? And she's gone. She got your money, and she's left.
That's right. It happens just as soon as button is clicked and the money's gone, you don't exist anymore to them, you know.
Couple more quick questions on that, and then we're going to be closing up here because I want to talk about your novels and your fiction. But what do you think the future of cryptocurrency in the world? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think what the U.S. did to the Prince Group is a perfect example that cryptocurrency really cannot be trusted. That nobody has ever made any sense out of it from the get-go. All you're buying is an algorithm, and that's it. That's only worth as much as you can get somebody to pay for it. It's really a scam in itself, because what they wanted to do, that particularly big international criminal people, they wanted to get away from country currency, where somebody is controlling that currency and they're not controlling it. If they can control the crypto, then they control their universe. But if you got to deal in American dollars or Chinese money or something, then you're really not ultimately in control. And so they just wanted to move that next level up of control and have their own international currency. It's very, very shallow, though. It's like I say, they got $15 billion at the stroke of a button, you know.
Oh man, yeah.
And that's the downside. And there's no recourse. There's nobody guaranteeing that money. There's no FDIC or anything.
No, you at the bank of crypto. You at the bank of being all alone if something happens.
That's right. You're dancing on the edge of a knife with crypto. It may be in there tomorrow or the next day, and it could be gone in the next 2 seconds.
I want to get your take right quick here before we go into the great novels that you've written. About the global economy, I know, the U.S. is in a battle with China. How do you think this is going to play out? It appears we may be losing the race.
This is something I've been talking about 6 or 7 years to people that I know, and we get into China and how strong they are in the U.S. and all of that. And I said, well, Chinese are going bankrupt. I said, they don't have any money. All the things that you look at are all smoke screens. You have to understand about China that all of their financial information is a state secret. So what their debts are, nobody knows. We might have an idea of what their assets are, but nobody knows their debts. And you don't know anything about China. They are fundamentally bankrupt 3 times over because nobody gets to see the balance sheets. We all assume that they're very powerful, and a lot of it's the Western press. They're building these aircraft carriers now. Well, they built 3 of them, and I don't know how many articles I said, well, they're building 3. They're building them so fast. I think we're at risk. China's going to win. China doesn't know how to operate an aircraft carrier. They built them. They're not even well designed. What they are is massive ball of metal. They're just models. They really don't function as a military weapon system because it's so incredibly complicated to run an aircraft carrier. Plus, it's also incredibly expensive. Neither one. China doesn't have the money nor the expertise to deal with an aircraft carrier. Mike, if you want to go back to it, the essence of the Chinese economy are 2 things: rebar and concrete. They just want to produce more of it every year, whether they need to or not. It pretty much is and I was going to write a short article on this. It's pretty much a landfill economy. They will produce, they will never stop producing. They don't care what the market needs. They will just keep producing because the Communist Party mentality is we need to produce more next year than we did this year. Oh, nobody used it this year. You produce more. And the Communist Party is so strong that they basically force people to keep producing. They produce, 50% more steel than they need, or the world needs. They produce 50% more concrete than the world needs. They just keep producing it, though. That 30% of the garments that are produced in Chinese factory go straight to the landfill. There's no market for them. They produce them and then they send them straight to the landfill, and then they start building them all over again. And they did this years ago. And the Chinese are fixated on steel. They would produce the steel, and then it's very poor quality. So at the end of the production cycle, they would probably scrap 30% of their production and send it around to the front of the factory again to redo it because it was such poor quality. But they kept the numbers going up. Okay, we produced 1 million tons last year. We're going to produce 2 million tons. Nobody talks about the need for that or the quality. and the quality is really pretty terrible. Most everything is just produce. What for? We don't really know. We're communists. We just want to produce. We want to have. Our whole system has just become bankrupt.
With the high-level chips now being freed up over there with their AI, is that a potential issue that they can lead the world in technology?
Well, they can, but they'll just overproduce that too. Like you've probably seen some articles about the humanoids. There's robots that they produce.
Right.
They'll just keep producing those, and nobody will have use for all those. They'll just send them all to the landfill. They don't have any sense of market demand and meeting that. We don't need the steel mills that they have. We don't need virtually everything that they have. We don't really need. They produce it, and there's a.
Is that because of the controlled economy by the communist government there? They control it, and they had to certain target whether they need it or not. That sounds like based on a false economy to me.
Oh, it is. It's all smoke and mirrors. And the only people you need to make happy are the head guys at the Chinese Communist Party, which are all politicians. They're not brilliant scientists. They're not brilliant anything. They're just a bunch of guys shuffling papers. Rocket forces about 5 years ago. Xi came through. The head guy in China came through and fired all the rocket force generals. There's like 10 or 11 of them. Just wiped them all out. And why would he do that? Well, I guess there was some kind of an issue or whatever, and they were all corrupt. Well, as it turns out, that story is that, yes, one of the communist head guys happened to be doing a tour of the missile silo. He was talking to a young captain and said, well, it must be kind of bad to sleep right next to so much of this rocket fuel every night, in this hole. And the captain just kind of laughed and said, well, no, it's fine. He says, it's all water anyway. And so what the rocket generals had done is taken all of the missile fuel and sold it on the black market and put water in the missiles. So they found out about that and fired all the generals. Well, he just fired them again. So whoever he put in charge of to correct the corruption problem, they must have found something else to do that was corrupt, because there's just that over and over and over again with the Chinese. They just never be world class because there's so much corruption. And they fudge everything. I've said this for 20 years. The three pillars of the Chinese communist economy: lying, cheating, and stealing. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Those are once that goes away, you got nothing.
It sounds like they fooled a lot of the world. Africa, South America, a lot of people want to do business with China now.
Well, they brought all the money and they gave it to them. But like they built fast, high-speed rails. Okay, China has 40 high-speed rail systems. We have 0, yet we're the top economy in the world. That should tell you something right there. But here's the thing. If you get into the books, which you're not allowed to see, but we know enough about it. This is probably the best thing the CIA is doing the economic thing. Of those 40 fast train routes, 40 of them lose money every day, every week, every year, and will do that until eternity. It's just a huge sinkhole of money. And the same thing with the apartment complex. They have built 50 what they call ghost cities. If you look at the skyline, you'll see maybe 80 to 100 or 200 high rises, all 50 stories up, and there won't be a soul around. Why would they do that? Well, because you need rebar and you need concrete. And what they'll do is they'll be a 50-story building with all the rebar and all the concrete, and then walk away. They won't spend any money on elevators or finishing or door handles or anything. But they have done this in Cambodia. They built about 2,000 high-rises in the capital city, and about 10% of them are actually being used. The others are just ghosts. They're sitting there. I can see, if I look south from my place, I can see 3 that they just put up less than 2 years ago. And then there are 3 more north of me they just put up the last 3 years, and there's nothing there. They quit. They walk away as soon as the concrete and rebar, they don't need more concrete or rebar, then they walk away because it doesn't help their numbers. And for those to build those buildings, 100% Chinese workers, 100% Chinese contracts, 100%. So nobody has any visibility into what it's costing them or what they're going to use it for. That's we'll build you a 50-story building, but you don't ask any questions. I'm bringing my own workers in here, and I'm bringing everything. It's going to come from China. All the material, rebar, concrete, doorknobs, whatever, it's coming from China. All the workers are coming from China. And then they go away, though. None of it works. They've built 3 high-speed rail systems, not high-speed, but 3 railroad systems in Africa. One is in Kenya, one is in Ethiopia, and one is in Guinea. And each time, about 18 months into the program, well, they're trying to actually operate these as a going railroad, particularly like in Ethiopia. And then 18 months later, it's all bankrupt. They can't make enough money on the business to even service the debt that the Chinese lent them the money for. Okay. A very elaborate train system in Laos. 18 months after they built it, the business doesn't support that kind of very expensive. They charge them, I don't know, $1.3 billion in Laos. Laos average income is probably $1,000 a year.
There's no market for what they're building then.
No, the people don't have ability to pay for any of that stuff. That should tell you something. They got 40 high-speed rail systems in China. We have 0 because they have been trying to do a high-speed rail system from Las Vegas, Los Angeles for like 25 years. They still can't make the numbers work, so they don't get any money. The politicians keep dreaming of it and dreaming of it and dreaming of it. We need a high-speed rail. But in America, what makes America the #1 country in the world is something you would find kind of interesting. It's cost accounting. It's the finance side of it. You have to have a balance sheet. It has to be audited by professionals, so there's no smoke and mirrors. That's one thing America has that the Chinese have no idea what to do. They wouldn't know anything about running a proper accounting system. They'd be fudging it and cheating from day one.
And still in America, if the ledger sheet shows you're going to be at a deficit, you don't do it.
That's right. So in the private economy, thank God for the CPAs and for the cost accounting system in America. The cost accounting system in America is, and in Europe also, is truth. Not allowed to go to jail in our society, but not in China. You better be fudging them or you're going to go to jail. So they don't really know. At the end of the day, the Chinese don't know how much it's costing them to produce something. They just know what they can sell it for to the West. So all these electric cars that they're building, they're selling for $35,000, say. Well, it may be costing them $50,000 to build that. If they know it, they're not allowed to say anything about it. And the Chinese government is not going to say anything. So last year, the Chinese economy it was $1 trillion surplus. Their trade balance was $1 trillion. But you don't know how much it cost them to get that trillion. And I'm thinking it probably cost the Chinese economy $2 trillion to produce the $1 trillion that they got on the open market.
All right. Well, it sort of appears that maybe we're not in a neck and neck race. America still, even though we've got some problems, what would be your greatest concern about the U.S. economy, if you have any? Well,
it's back to what we just got talking about, the cost accounting. We have very, very good cost accounting, and we have $38.5 trillion in debt. So those numbers don't lie, and that's #1 problem, has been for the last 40 years in this country, is the debt. Not only the consumers, but the government. So we just have debt. And the Chinese have more debt than us, maybe 4 times as much. They're so bankrupt that it's painful, but you'll never know it. But nobody knows. The Chinese communists don't even know what their status is because they don't allow anybody to deal with the reality of the books. Western banks are smart, and they've worked here. They get some backdoor information and all. They're basically saying that the Chinese, their debt is about $400 trillion. No, I'm sorry, 40 trillion. And ours is 38. Thing is, the Chinese economy is only about half as big as the U.S., so they're just toast.
Will we ever have the political will to try to do anything about the debt here?
One thing about this is that the numbers don't lie. So if we have to keep paying the interest on the debt, the politics will take care of itself. And this has been something most people know in the finance area for the last 20 years. We're going to get down to where we have interest on the national debt, we have the Defense Department, and we have Medicare and Medicaid. Those are going to be the only three line items in the United States budget, is those three line items. Forget education, forget all this other stuff. And we're at that point now. The interest on the national debt is the number one budget item in the U.S. It is higher than the Defense Department. They're going at about $1.2 trillion in interest on the national debt, and the Defense Department is going at about $1 trillion.
So that can't sustain itself at some point.
The cost accounting is going to take care of that debt issue. That means that you're either going to have to stop spending money on pretty much everything except defense just to feed the national debt, the interest on the national debt. And it's come very quickly. I think about 5 years ago that the interest on the national debt was about, let's say, $700 billion. Well, now it's at 1.2 trillion. So it's almost doubled in 5 or 6 years. It's at the point, it's the math of it also. It's become exponential, you know.
Well, I don't know if any politician is going to be able to explain that to the constituents when they say, well, you know, we're out of money. I'm sorry, your pet project's going to have to go by the wayside. That's going to be a hard sell.
It is. And I don't know. It's the stark reality of it all. And I was telling this years ago, back probably George Bush and Obama. I said, there's going to be a point in time where nobody would want to be the president because all he's going to sit there and figure out what little money he has, where's he going to spend it? The rest of it, he just sit down and say, well, what's the next check we had to write for the debt? And there's not going to be any room to make any other decisions.
We're going on here. I could talk about this, but I think we've got the gist of it. So I want to go back into your fiction writing a little bit. Let's change gears completely here. And how did you get into the art of writing fiction?
Well, pure serendipity. People had asked me about writing the book. I said, well, no, I don't really want to do that. And then a couple of guys tried to do it for me. And that was my spur. That was early on, probably 2004 or 5, 3, 4 or 5, somewhere in there. There was some serious attempts to try to write the book. And I said, well, if it turns out, you know, it didn't take much long for me. I said, well, if we're going to do this, they're not going to be able to write it. I'll have to sit by them and tell them what to write. So I might as well write it myself. And then a couple of years passed, and then one night I said, well, you know, let's just see what happens. So I started writing the books 2010. And then this is another part of my life. I have no idea what happened. I wrote 001 continuously, never stopped, never had a book outline, wrote it all in longhand because I can't type. They just flowed. It was the easiest thing I've ever done is writing 001. And I had no idea what's going to come next, or I would keep track of what has to be woven into the story, but I didn't have any outline about how I wanted to start and how I wanted to end, which made it, for me, the adventure of it. The lady in Key West did my books. I finished the last one in 2023. She'd do my books, and she'd say, well, this is really interesting. She said, I can't wait to see how it ends. And I said, well, I'm kind of like you. I can't wait to see how it ends either. I have no idea.
Are you planning are you writing another book right now? Or?
No, I started in 2010, but the first one was published in 2012. At the end of the day, 11 books in 11 years. I haven't written anything since then.
11 novels out right now.
Yeah. You know, I was influenced by James Bond movies. All the openings of the books start like a James Bond movie. You don't have to wait to develop any characters. They just thrown at you, you know. Yeah,
I love that. It reminded me of Ian Fleming. Like I said, right immediately you're thrown into the deal, and you get captured. I did. I got captured by, hey, what's going to happen to this guy? This is a strange guy, man. I tell you, he lying in the desert, and I'm not going to give away the book. But how can people get a hold of your novels, which are read some Ian Fleming type James Bond novels? Go and find these books and get them. How do you get a hold of your novels?
Well, to tell you the truth, Mike, and I didn't know who did it or how it was done, but one day I Googled my author's name that's on the book, William E. Koss. If you just Google that, most of the covers will come up immediately. You don't have to do anything else than just put William E. Koss, and then I guess that's the only thing the system knows is that all these covers come up, which is another story. Those are all hand-drawn covers. And the man that did that is an incredible artist in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And once I found out how good he was, then I would come up with these montages and say, could you draw this? Can you draw that? And it's all hand-drawn. every charcoal pencil, everything's hand drawn. And so that was another facet of the books that I loved. I said, well, I'm going to keep writing these books just to see what kind of cover I can put on it. I'd give this stuff to him, and he'd come back with his artwork, and it was just phenomenal. So all of those hand-drawn, your originals. And I have the originals actually in my house here. I framed them and everything.
Pretty interesting covers, I must say. So I'm just going to whet people's appetite. Go look at those covers, and then you want to see what's inside the book.
I swear, Mike, I probably wrote 6 novels just because I knew I would come up with 6 more covers. Designing the covers just got to be a wonderful thing. The other little side note, because I was a lifelong bachelor, I personally knew all 22 girls that are on the covers. There's 11 books, 2 covers, front and back. And I knew all of those girls as friends. I'll call them friends. And some of them are from Russia, some from Thailand, some from Colombia, wherever. They were part of the story, if you will. The one on the 001, the front cover, was a girl from Russia. Tell you the truth, Mike, and I've done it. I've done it in the last 6 months. I'll pick up one of my own books and start reading it, and I swear, 90% of it, I don't remember.
Yeah, who wrote this? It's sort of like your whole career. Who am I? Who am I? And what am I doing here?
Yeah. And not once do I remember how the plot goes. It's all over the place. And I said, well, I don't remember any of this stuff. And I wrote them. All the manuscripts are here in Melbourne Beach, and they're all handwritten.
Yeah, that's the labor of love, handwriting, all of that. Yeah, but I must say, for the readers out there, man, you take people on a journey. I mean, I've already been to, I haven't read the whole book, about half the book. I've been on 40 countries already, all kind of missions.
It got to be where got so involved that I said, well, I have a map and I have a list of the places that the book takes you to. I don't know if they had that in the Kindle version, maybe not.
Hey, it just takes me back to the Ian Fleming days. I loved Ian Fleming. Man, I got the Dr. No, I got Thunderball. I read all of those books. And, of course, my mom looked at the cover one time and said, what are you reading? I was about 15 years old. I said, so that's just James Bond, Ma. Well, is there any particular message or theme there that you're trying to bring forward in your stories? I don't think there is a theme or a message, but in your mind, is there a particular theme or message that you're trying to bring out?
No, not really. People say, well, that sounds like a great life to live. And I said, well, it is. You have to be a certain person. And I said, and we've talked about that. Always alone, never lonely is the core of it. Cannot be worried about the rest of the world or anything. You just got to go do these missions. And actually, thank God for me, there was a military, because otherwise I don't know what I would have done. That's what I've told people. This was probably the only thing I could have done. I couldn't do the sheriff's department job in Lincoln Parish. I couldn't be a lawyer. I couldn't do any of that stuff.
Well, there's a lot of sheriffs. There's only 10 of you around the world, so that's pretty neat. Let me finish off here. I know we've been talking 2 hours. I've enjoyed every second of it. You've visited just about every corner of the world. What place still feels more like home?
As it turns out, and it's gone on for so long, Mike, there's a list of 10 places that are all home. When I'm in Cambodia, I feel at home. When I'm here in Melbourne Beach, I feel at home. I'm Key West, I feel everywhere that I have a place, I feel at home. And then what's disturbing is a lot of times I don't even belong in other places, and I still feel at home. It's another part of living this life. You're going to get homesick, then you're not going, even a little bit, you're not going to do it. But I've done it so long. It's been part of my personality so long. I was doing the contract work for 27 years, military contracts. So I'm basically doing what I was doing in the military, except I'm just doing it on contract. In those 27 years, there was not any time that I stayed in one place more than 3 weeks. And that would be either one of my places, like in Cambodia or South Africa or something. Otherwise, I'm on the move. And when I was in the military, it was 24 years. I was never in any one place more than 6 weeks. So you're looking at 51 years where you're never in any place more than 6 weeks. But even that would be a long time. 3 weeks would be about the limit. A lot of times in my contract work, when I'm lucky enough to stay in some 5-star hotel somewhere, I feel like him. I show up at the airport, somebody picks me up, takes me to this beautiful hotel. Then I go out and wade through the mud somewhere in some village, and then do the mission, and then come back and go home. And then meanwhile, you meet a couple of good-looking girls. So yeah, I approximated that James Bond.
Yeah, you were a heck of a lot closer than most of us will ever come. That's why my promo for this whole podcast is Meet the Real James Bond. We're going to be talking with him. I guess I got one more question that, you look back on all this remarkable job that you had, career, right here from little old bitty North Louisiana into your global intelligence work. What are you most grateful for right now?
I have to be eternally grateful for just what the serendipity was when I went in the service. It just fit perfectly. That's a miracle that no one should be able to live, and I did. But looking back now, Mike, it's actually back to Ruston. How can I have been gone for almost 60 years now, and I can come back to Ruston and I'll chat with you and George, and then we had the whole group of us at the Flying Burger the other day, is Jimmy and Reg, and Jimmy Martin's a perfect example. I ran across Jimmy Martin 1 or 2 days before we had that bigger luncheon, and Jackson was saying, "Well, you know who that is?" I said, "No, I don't." "Yeah, that's Jimmy Martin." When Jimmy Martin and I started talking, it was like we were out at Frazier Field in 1963.
Right.
And when all that ended, I said, I cannot believe I haven't seen Jimmy Martin in 61 years. And yet it's like I only saw him last week. And so all of those people, you and all of your friends, JB and Jimmy, and even Ernie, I never knew Ernie in high school, but the fact we all went to Ruston High School, you kind of feel that way. And Donnie Brown.
Yes.
Did not really see any of Donnie Brown between 1957 and 2016. But when we talked in 2016, it's like we've been hanging out fishing for the last 10 years,
I think to put a bow on it, you would say this place right here sort of kept you grounded and still keeps you grounded.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like a visit to Ruston. And tell you the truth, I have probably the biggest dilemma, or not dilemma, but the biggest mystery is how it all hung together for so many years. How do I know all these guys, and how do we all still fit together after so many years? Not 30 or 20 or 30 years, but 60 years, Well,
that's the power of memory and the power of good memories when you have
good people. Your mom and dad were absolutely the best people that ever walked the earth.
I'm going to have to second that, and I'm going to have to put your dad. He was the best Little League coach. He may have been the best coach I ever had because he was so patient with all of us and never, let me teach you. And he actually taught us. Of course, I grew up with a baseball in my hands, so he didn't have, but he did. He taught us the game of baseball, and he also knew we were youngsters and have fun. That was the main thing. Have fun.
Well, I didn't know this until just a couple of years ago, but we were having lunch with Reg Casabry, and he said, he says, I have to, of all the coaches, he says, there's only one that I want to thank, and that's your dad. I said, what? He said, yeah, your dad would come to me on the sidelines or somewhere, and he would talk to me about pitching. And I said, I never knew you did that one time. He says, oh, yeah, he would come all the time. And he says, he's the only pitching coach I've ever had. And I didn't even know he even talked to Reg at all, but he would do that. Yeah. He loved to help people out. He loved to teach,
You know what George's biggest memory, Brother George, who played professional ball, his biggest memory is going over to your house, I believe, and your dad had the baseball with a string.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the string was probably 30 feet, long rope. Yeah. Swinging it around and lets you hit it. And George said, man, Tex could hit that ball. I could never hit that ball. It was coming around like it was coming around.
My dad invented that because he didn't want to pitch batting practice and go pick up the balls. And so he drilled a hole into baseball. And it was the most ingenious thing. I used that from probably until I finished baseball at Tech. We were still doing that. And I said, Dad, can you swing the ball? That's what I would tell him. Would you go swing the ball for me? And he'd always, never once did he say, I'm sorry, I'm busy. He would always do it,
Yeah, that's a dad, and that's the kind of dad we had. He never was too busy when he was off. Can you hit me some ground balls? Can you throw to me or whatever? It was always there. And
we lived the ultimate life back in those days. We really did.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's the most endearing thing to me, but it's also the most incredible thing. I think back of how many years has passed, and yet that feeling is still there amongst all the guys.
You go out to the beach some there and enjoy the beach? Is that what you like to do?
Well, I do some. Mostly when I'm here, I would work on my cars, and then I kind of do whatever I want to do since I retired. Where I am here on the third floor is where I write. The other story, which is almost the book itself, is all what I call writing quarters. I've written those books in so many different places all over the world. But yeah, but I'll only be here for a couple of weeks. Hope to come to Ruston, and then I got to go to Las Vegas and Manhattan Beach, California, and go down to Key West. And so I kind of stay on the move even when I'm in the U.S.
And I guess one last thing, your wife now, she's in Cambodia.
Yeah, she's in Cambodia. And this is another thing that will stress out the normal American people, but she's 43 years younger than I am. And it was her idea to get married. I said,
Yes.
I'm not supposed to be married. She had met me, and for some reason, she decided that I was the man she was supposed to marry. She's Buddhist, so they believe very heavily in fate. That it's my fate that I met this man.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, well, I'm not meant to be married.
Right.
And she said, well, if you weren't meant to be married, then I'm not meant to be married. And she's never had a date in her life.
That was her destiny, as well.
Well, it was. I said, how do you know that? I said, you're such a young girl that you can marry somebody and have a family. She said, no. She said, I'm only meant to know one man. And I said, well, okay. Point where I said, okay, if that's the way she feels about it, I'll marry her.
Yeah.
But she did say that. She says, maybe you were just waiting for me to be born. That's the only thing that makes me comfortable with the marriage is that if I had actually pursued her, we never had a date. We just walked along the river a couple of 3 times. And I said, well, okay, if you're not going to marry anybody else, I'm going to marry you. And I'm coming back to Cambodia in 3 or 4 months. And these are the 2 days I'm available to get married.
It's not exactly your typical Southern wedding.
No. It was, oh, my God. It's so foreign and exotic, you wouldn't believe. I don't really know where all this stuff came from. It just came out of my pen.
Well, I don't think you know where a lot of from the time you were 4 years old, you didn't want a birthday party. So I don't know where all this is coming from.
No, my wife, my mother was right. Where did he come from?
Yeah, what is it? Must have came from a crypto or another planet or something,
Yeah, all the way, I was in my 40s, and she's still asking my dad, what do you think? Well, not only where did he come from, but what do you think's wrong with him?
Well, your dad, dude, he knew everything was going to work out just right.
Well, he was definitely the guy in my corner, because there were a lot of my relatives and all were also upset with me because I wasn't following the path and all that.
Yeah.
My dad would stop him, and he was my buffer. The best guy you could ever have.
Oh man, yeah, no doubt. Fond memories.
I don't know how to explain it, but the time that I had in Ruston and since then, and when I come back, it's just amazing. Yeah, and I'll keep you posted. I'm not sure when I'm getting to Ruston, but hopefully it'll happen.
All right, yeah, we'll certainly get together. I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Okay, thanks again, Mike.
You've been listening to Mike's conversation with Ed Koss. Be sure to visit Mike's Facebook page for more details about this podcast, including replay dates and times so you can catch the program again or share it with a friend. From Mike and the entire crew here at the show, we really appreciate your support and for joining us today. Until next time, this is Mark saying, keep the music and the conversation going.